All right. Well, first of all, for those of you who have joined us already, thank you so much, for registering for today's webinar, The Death of MES. We're really excited to be here today with spring in the air, coming to you live from MachineMetrics headquarters. Today we're here to talk about, the death of MES, and let's be honest. For those of you who are already here, everyone hates their ERP and MES. And we found that there's some pretty good reasons why. These monolithic systems, as we know them today, try to do too many things. They require way too much manual data entry. They're oftentimes inflexible and more often than not built on legacy technology. And most importantly, they produce unreliable data. Well, we can't solve the problems of tomorrow with the tools of the past. So in today's ultra-competitive world, manufacturers must be empowered by their software, not held captive by it. The good news, a new school of thought is emerging, led by visionary software companies such as MachineMetrics, working together with one shared goal: accelerate our industry's ability to connect, to optimize, to adapt, and to evolve no matter what those circumstances may be. It's time to start driving your own future without compromise. And that revolution has already begun. Is this the death of MES as we know it? Well, that's what we're here to explore today. Next slide, please. My name is Graham Immerman, and per usual, I am your host and moderator, VP of Marketing here at MachineMetrics. We're going to have a great webinar lined up for all of you today. If you go to the next slide, please. But before we get started to the main event, just a couple quick housekeeping notes. So first of all, for those of you asking, this webinar is being recorded. If you're not, we will send you a link after we are done. You can share that with your team or rewatch what we hope to be a great webinar. Questions are welcome. So there's really two ways to ask questions. I saw that somebody had their hand raised. The two ways to ask questions are either A, use the chat function within the Zoom navigation, or two, the Q&A section on the right hand of the side navigation. Please use these at any time and feel free to ask. We may be able to get to them in real time. Sometimes we'll save them because we think they're such a good question that we'll hold them for the Q&A. So those are the only rules. And enough from me. I want to quickly introduce our presenter today. Today's speaker is Susie Foran. Really excited to have her presenting today. She's our Director of Product Marketing. I couldn't be any happier to have her as a member of my team. Susie has a strong history in the manufacturing space, specifically in technology, including in the MES space. So she's got a lot to say on the subject. Susie, enough from me. I'm going to pass the microphone over to you, and you can take things away from here.
All right. Well, thank you, Graham, for that introduction. Before we jump in, I just have to say, since this report was released a couple of months ago, the reaction has been intense. I think anytime you declare the death of anything, it's bound to be polarizing, and this case has been no different. I think it's clear that people are fired up about the future of manufacturing technology. In one camp are the MES advocates, either the people who work for MES vendors, those who make their living consulting on or implementing MES, or tenured users of MES who are understandably passionate about a technology that has been essential to manufacturers for decades. And the other camp are the people who are perhaps experiencing the shortcomings of some of the traditional MES systems firsthand. Those who saw the title of the report and said, yes, finally, someone gets it. So today, we're going to explore exactly what we mean by the death of MES as we know it. I'll certainly, as Graham mentioned, I'll certainly cover the challenges that the traditional broad operational systems pose. But I think the second part of the title, as we know it, is the most important piece, and it tends to get a little bit lost in the fray. I'm not here to argue that MES hasn't played a huge role and provided value to manufacturing, or even that it doesn't have a place in the future in one form or another. what I will do today is outline where those gaps are starting to appear and how manufacturers can start to take advantage of the most valuable resource at their disposal, machine data, to address their current system's shortcomings, while also setting them on a path to a long-term strategy that capitalizes on best-of-breed technologies, a vision we call the connected factory ecosystem. So before we jump fully into that vision, let's briefly explore the current state of the manufacturing industry and the technology that supports it. I'll be frank, manufacturers deserve a medal for what they've been able to accomplish over the last few years, decades. I mean, it's always been a really tough industry. They've managed to continue producing critical goods despite a global pandemic, supply chain challenges, workforce shortages, and surging customer demand. In the face of everything, manufacturers always find a way to get things done. And I think we all know that the market is more turbulent than it has ever been, and these conditions require unprecedented agility. And in order to be agile, you need a few things. You need visibility into what is happening throughout your business, optimized processes, clear communication channels, and the confidence to make the necessary decisions when the time comes. And the reality is that manufacturers' ability to thrive is only as good as the technology that they are relying on to manage their operations. As we'll explore in a few minutes here, current systems are extremely complex in scope, highly reliant on people, and are deeply entrenched, making it pretty difficult to innovate. Now, the industrial environment is growing increasingly data-driven, as it should, and manufacturers need a technology stack that is capable of autonomously connecting production data and providing the tools to quickly act on that data in order to improve efficiency, drive innovation, and gain a competitive edge. There are many manufacturers that we hear from who know they need to make changes to their technology strategy, but in the same breath will say that they're waiting until things settle down to make a move. But the truth is, if you're waiting for the right time, you're going to be waiting forever. Because as we all know, when one disruption passes, there's usually another one waiting in the wings to take its place. So, up until fairly recently, manufacturers' technology options were limited to those provided by legacy vendors, typically broad suites claiming to meet every need with a broad monolithic solution. On the screen here are lists of some of the most common modules you will find in a typical ERP and MES system. At face value, that is a lot. I mean, that is amazing. If a solution can provide all that at equally high quality, I mean, that is a significant achievement. But it sounds so simple and convenient in theory, but the truth is it's very limiting when you put this idea into practice, because these suites are very bloated from decades of expansion, whether it's via bolt-on solutions, customization, or acquired solutions. There's very little in the way of vertical specific capabilities. And manufacturers are devoting just an enormous amount of resources trying to shoehorn these very large, very generalized systems into their operations instead of focusing their time and efforts on areas that really matter, such as innovation. And by promising to do all these things and deliver on all of these capabilities, it's setting themselves up for unrealistic expectations. And that inevitably leads to frustration. So manufacturers spending too much time and effort trying to fix what they have, they're putting themselves at risk of falling behind. Another issue we find with the traditional monolithic solutions is that they rely on error-prone data and require significant human intervention to implement, maintain, and use these solutions in day-to-day operations. I think all manufacturers know that highly skilled and well-trained employees are huge assets on the production floor. But the reality is that most manufacturers are struggling to hire and retain capable workers. According to recent research from Deloitte, the US manufacturing industry is expected to have 2.1 million unfulfilled jobs by 2030. And the executives that they surveyed all believe that finding the right talent is now 36% harder than it was in 2018. A high turnover rate means that manufacturers are constantly training and retraining employees on these complex systems. They're diverting focus from critical areas like product quality, innovation, and customer satisfaction. And additionally, these systems are built around human supplied data, which is inherently unreliable. I mean, humans make typos. And when relying on operator inputted data, manufacturers are failing to take advantage of the valuable and comprehensive information that's being collected or being produced at the equipment level. So as the industry grapples with these macro level workforce challenges, individual manufacturers must invest in technology that alleviates some of these pressures using automation and easy to use, easy to learn technology. Ultimately, it's time to seek a better alternative. Fortunately, as Graham mentioned earlier, there's a new school of thought addressing the shortcomings of traditional systems that's gaining traction. We call it the connected factory ecosystem, through which manufacturers can pursue a collection of best of breed solutions to solve each of their specific manufacturing problems, providing easy access to data and connected via APIs in order to create a single digital thread that is tailored to their individual circumstance. And again, as Graham mentioned, there are a number of other like-minded software vendors and manufacturers also heading down this path and working together to make the vision a reality. This connected factory ecosystem, it's just that, it's a vision, it's guiding us. It's a way for us to operate with the end in mind so that all the steps we take are intentional and moving us to that future state. So with that introduction out of the way, I think it's important to now look at what that future state can look like in comparison with what the world we're operating in today. So our vision has kind of 5 core components that I'm going to walk you through for the remainder of this session. First is that we believe in a world of configurability, where solutions offer the flexibility to quickly generate purpose-built applications that are complementary to each other and integrations that reflect a manufacturer's unique processes, because the truth is no manufacturer is exactly the same. Grab a sip of water here. Now, on the left-hand side, exploring kind of by a couple of key factors here. When you think about the capabilities included inside of a broad solution, as I mentioned on that graphic earlier, they are massive in their scope. And as a result, they are just overly complex. There are major functional gaps depending on which vertical industry you're in. And over time, these providers of horizontal platforms, MES and ERP, have attempted to address weaknesses, often via acquisition and bolt-on, only to add more complexity to their systems. And when vendors don't adequately fill a gap themselves, it falls on customers to rely on costly and time-consuming customization to make it work properly. Now, down the road, this leads to difficulties with upgrades and adds a significant amount of technical debt. And you have to first untangle all that custom code before you can ever make an upgrade to a newer version of the software. While this has been phenomenal for systems integrators, manufacturers are often powerless to make adjustments to their own systems without that third-party support. And these heavily customized systems can take years to fully implement in a single facility, much less scale across multiple locations. And this is just a drain on already limited resources. And these complex systems have extremely steep learning curves and require significant training before staff can begin to realize the value from the system. So in an industry plagued by skilled worker shortages and high turnover, relying on systems with heavy training burdens is no small thing. It's not a minor inconvenience. It's a very significant hurdle that they have to overcome. And ultimately, these manufacturers are left with bespoke solutions that make it difficult to deploy across multiple locations. I've heard of several cases of manufacturers where they've poured millions of dollars into one facility, and then the rest of the facilities are, sort of left hanging out in the breeze with not much going on in the way of technology. And so what that does is your plants are following different processes, they're reporting on their performance in different ways, and the data produced is inconsistent. So how can you possibly get a clear view of your entire enterprise with this method? Now, looking at it through the lens of the connected factory ecosystem, best of breed solutions that solve specific manufacturing problems that integrate together instead of expecting one solution to meet all of your requirements. These solutions are modern, they have flexible architecture that relies on configuration, not customization. So you're not untangling code, you don't need to have on-site developers. It greatly reduces the burden on the IT staff, as well as the need for outside support. And what this does is it makes it, really much faster to implement. It's much easier to learn and much easier for the workers on the shop floor to operate. And this collaborative ecosystem is able to leverage highly mature SaaS technology that provides the best possible user experience with the least possible manual data entry. So again, it's really alleviating some of that, menial burden on the workers that are trying to just do their jobs effectively. From a scalability standpoint, because you're not writing custom code, you're not relying on third-party systems integrators, it's much easier to roll out updates across locations and achieve a level of standardization and reporting that you need if you have multiple locations around the world. Now, one thing I want to address is, thanks to the ubiquitous Gartner Magic Quadrant, the term niche has gained, perhaps unfairly, a negative connotation. And if you're not familiar with the Magic Quadrant, vendors with the broadest functionality are typically considered leaders and are placed in the upper right-hand corner of the graphic, while niche players tend to be more focused in their coverage, are placed in the lower left. But even Gartner asserts that niche is not inherently a bad thing. All it means is it's a term used to describe highly specialized offerings. And so I think people in the past have sort of shied away from highly specific solutions, understandably, because previously there wasn't a great way to tie them all together. And they were, it became more and more to manage. But as we'll explore in the next few sections with the availability of integrations and APIs, that is no longer the case. And finally, I'll put it to you this way. Automakers don't try to build a car from start to finish completely on their own. Instead, as I think many of you know and are a part of, they rely on a really robust supply chain of highly skilled, specialized suppliers that are able to devote all of their time and resources into being the best at what they do. And the same principle applies to the technology that supports these manufacturers. All right, moving on to the second component of this vision. We see a world of choice where manufacturers are free to build a technology stack with the tools they need, not just the one their ERP or MES suite has chosen for them. Best of breed systems that connect will win over all-in-one solutions. Okay, so as the adage goes, if everything is a priority, then nothing is a priority. And vendors who are trying to meet all of manufacturers' needs in a single solution, it's an admirable notion, and it's completely understandable why that appeals so greatly. But by going down this road, providers of broad systems are limiting their ability to innovate. And even worse, it's undercutting manufacturers' ability to pursue innovation on their own terms. By handcuffing themselves to one vendor, manufacturers are limited by the offerings of that primary vendor. This hinders their ability to explore and invest in innovative technologies that may be better equipped to meet their needs. For providers of broad platforms like MES and ERP, their investments in research and development are also spread incredibly thin. All of those components that we looked at the beginning, that you don't just create that one time and then leave it forever, or I guess maybe you do. But if you want to innovate, you have to take all of your R&D dollars and slice it up so finely in order to address the whole suite that it's not going to be able to keep up with the innovation of best of breed providers, which I'll get into in just a moment. Finally, if customers continue to try and address gaps in their systems through customization or limiting themselves to tools provided by that vendor, they only become more deeply entrenched. And their investments end up focusing on filling gaps instead of adding new, exciting, innovative technologies that can really drive them forward. In the connected factory ecosystem, there's freedom of choice. There's the ability to choose the vendors that align best with your needs. Manufacturers have no need to waste valuable resources trying to shoehorn an ill-fitting solution into their operations. Investment can be prioritized on the best of breed solutions that provide immediate value instead of pouring money into their current kind of problematic systems. We talked earlier about the highly specialized, what that means. And here is a great example. It means that 100% of R&D dollars are spent on making those solutions the best it can be. That's where that best of breed comes along. And these vendors are highly specialized. So 100% of those efforts are spent on making it just the most phenomenal product. So you're not settling for okay, you're settling for excellence every step of the way. And then thinking about the future impact of where you invest. You can begin plugging the holes of your current system with modern options that you can grow with. Since understandably, many manufacturers have already made significant investments in their MES platforms. It makes sense to consider solutions that leverage and enhance what you already have rather than a costly rip and replace strategy. In many cases, the new data-centric IoT-based solutions are able to successfully bridge that gap between MES platforms and this new software methodology that can bring great competitive advantages. So I think the biggest takeaway here is, instead of trying to continue addressing those gaps in your MES with continued customization or feeling like you have to go with what's being provided by that vendor, it's time to maybe lift your head up and look across, because there's a world of options and you can find software that is able to meet your needs now, but then grow with you as you mature on this digital path. Take a quick sip of water. Okay. The third component of the vision is a world where machines drive people and systems to take action, not the other way around. And really, this comes in the form of process agility. So in the traditional systems, everything is viewed through the process. The steps and the workflows and all the materials flowing through are built off of templates to orchestrate the activity on the factory floor. But that begs the question of, workers can follow the plan, but what happens if the plan is flawed or simply becomes outdated? The plan is dictating the action on the floor, but if there's a break in the process and you're not gathering the right data, there is a significant lag while you first have to identify the problem, figure out how to solve the problem, and then go back into the system and make changes so that the problem doesn't happen again. Now, we talked about customizations during the initial implementation, but what about changes you want to make based on those day-to-day events? Any add-on or change to an MES typically must be customized, requiring a change in the model, the connection code related to an asset, the data transformation code, or all the above. This is obviously time-consuming, and modification difficulties increase proportionally with the size of the change. Now, as a result, a manufacturer has spent all that time and money customizing the MES, so it's difficult to make those adjustments down the road. And they're also far less likely to be consistently and regularly reviewing whether the model is really working the way it should. And it's so difficult to make changes that manufacturers tend to wait until they become too massive to ignore. And then they have to make sweeping changes in the MES, which is just highly disruptive. And it's just not an efficient way to address the issues. Now, in the connected factory ecosystem, the belief is that modern manufacturing processes must be fast, highly flexible, easy to put in place, but then also easy to change if you need to. And right now, again, it's MES is sort of like pushing things down onto the floor, but the feedback loop, there's a huge time delay. And the method with the connected factory ecosystem, it's the idea that procedures are underpinned by a system agnostic approach. It's not tied to the MES. It's asset data centricity, which focuses on the data produced by the equipment and the systems, and empowers the people closest to the machines to provide additional contextual information. So what this does is it enables accurate real-time visibility into the manufacturing performance with a scope and granularity that's just not possible within the constraints of a traditional MES. Now, the factory floor does not exist in a vacuum. Manufacturers' processes, their equipment and product lines are subject to continuous change influenced by operational and market pressures. And so dealing with rapid change is much easier when you're in an event data-based architecture. Now, we're talking about this idea of, the process is handed down to the shop floor, and then if an issue arises or a change needs to be made, in the ideal state, that machine data would automatically flow up into MES, and then the MES would react to that data and immediately hand down an updated process. That sounds phenomenal. And we're perhaps a ways away from a fully autonomous self-optimizing process. But the technology exists today to close that feedback loop and shrink the amount of time it takes to react to what is happening on the shop floor. And so data centricity gives you that visibility you need to make small adjustments, optimizing the process as you go with no need to wait until you hit critical mass to make sweeping changes. Okay. So the fourth element of our vision is a world of flexibility where data is democratized and accessible to be used across every department, not just in operations, accounting, planning, and data science. In most manufacturing environments, machines are the largest capital expense and produce massive volumes of data and also represent the true reality of what is happening on the production floor. And yet for many manufacturers, machine data is sort of treated as the last piece of the puzzle. It's, they get their ERP in place, their MES, they get, a maintenance system, they get all this, and then it's like the last mile connectivity, and they approach that step last. I'll explain in a moment why we want to flip that on its head, but, without that machine data, these systems like MES and ERP are still heavily dependent on manual data input. And, it's not uncommon to see operators on the factory floor painstakingly typing in part counts or recording transactions and completing quality check sheets by hand. This is inefficient, it's frustrating to the operators, and it's not a very good use of anyone's time. And what we see here is that this data, as a result, is rather error prone, it's incomplete, you're not getting a complete picture of what's happening. And also there's a significant time delay. Oftentimes manufacturers are gathering data at the end of a shift, at the end of a day, they're compiling it and reviewing it at the end of the week. And by that point, how much time have you lost when you could have made quicker changes and been able to react in a more efficient way to the circumstances surrounding your production? And finally, MES and ERP solutions are using proprietary data models. They have closely guarded APIs. There's heavy reliance on service organizations. To put it bluntly, they don't necessarily play nicely with others. And it's difficult, expensive, and time consuming to tie together all that data from all those disparate sources. So in the world of the connected factory ecosystem, as I mentioned, that machine connectivity, the pulling the data from the machine, that should be the first step. That is step one, and it's used as the foundation upon which to build the entire technology stack, because the truth is machines don't lie. They are based in reality. They are gathering the exact number of parts that are created. They know the conditions on the floor inside their machines. It's reliable and accurate. And when you have standardized production data that provides insights, it enables the systems around it to operate much more effectively. And I think this gets really into the heart of how this type of technology can improve the technology that you do have. And I think that's where the death of MES as we know it comes into play, because this is an opportunity to optimize the technology that you're currently working with. And now automated data collection at the machine level is allowing operators to focus on critical areas such as product quality, process improvement, safety, and it reduces the repetitive, inefficient administrative tasks that none of us like to do. Nobody likes to do repetitive manual data inputting or those kinds of, tedious tasks. And what that means is your operators are able to focus more on adding value to the organization instead of, wasting time with all that manual work. And we all want happier workers on the shop floor, because that leads to increased retention and, overall job satisfaction, which we all know is, clearly a huge challenge within manufacturing. In terms of reliability, as I mentioned before, machine data does not lie. It can't be manipulated. It is what it is, and it's complete and accurate. And finally, with how the data is made accessible for use, in the world of the connected factory ecosystem, rather than nesting data into preformed data silos, data should be accessible and usable across applications and for all users. It doesn't matter if you're a technical frontline worker or up in the business offices trying to make better operational decisions. What we're proposing is a scenario of data democratization, which results in a much more dynamic and highly controlled manufacturing process that enables data from multiple sources to be translated and contextualized and used alongside of each other to improve processes throughout the business. Okay. Now we've seen what the current state of manufacturing technology looks like alongside the connected factory ecosystem. Where do we go from here? To do that, let's take a look at the final piece of this vision. We believe in a world of rapid value where users can immediately leverage core functionality without having to rebuild the wheel from scratch and without the need of a data scientist, custom development capabilities. What I mean by that is, while the benefit of a vibrant connected factory ecosystem are clear, manufacturers are understandably overwhelmed at the prospect of making such a broad, significant change. They're cash strapped, overburdened, understaffed. And what we suggest is an incremental stepwise approach. For many manufacturers, they've already made significant investments in MES and ERP. And doing a radical rip and replace would be, first of all, just hugely disruptive, not to mention expensive, and also, it's going to have huge impacts on the culture of the organization. And so to get around that, it makes much more sense to implement solutions that leverage and enhance the existing software and makes it better. And you do this with data-centric IIoT-based solutions that help you bridge that gap and introduce the new advantages that allow you to go down this path of innovation while still, getting the value out of the investment that you've already made. And again, if necessary, manufacturers can keep their MES systems in place and add, a more lightweight platform that allows them to generate database context, can provide deeper insight into the systems. It can enable a much more continuous improvement approach to optimization, and it enables the creation of new business cases. And that's where kind of that measurable value comes into play. Beginning with use cases that are going to deliver measurable value, because that is how you build momentum. That's how you get everybody excited. That's how you start to be able to scale out from the initial implementation. And so being able to demonstrate value is just critical to getting these initiatives off the ground. And finally, investing, again, with the end in mind. I think I said earlier, you could keep pouring your money into one vendor, but then you are just entrenching yourself further, locking yourself into what they want to offer you, and you're kind of at their whim. Whereas if you invest with the end in mind, heading towards this direction of the connected factory ecosystem, you can align yourselves with vendors who share your worldview and who are working very diligently to make that vision a reality. So why are we talking about this now? I mean, a lot of this technology has been discussed for years. There's a host of different factors. First, machine data accessibility. The data from your equipment has never been more accessible than it is today. In the past, it required custom integrators to connect, thousands of sensors all around and build a, very expensive bespoke automation solution. But there are solutions today that allow you to very quickly start to gather the machine data that's already being collected by the sensors within your equipment. And that availability has really been, that's really the tipping point for all of this. That has been kind of the piece that's been holding up a lot of this innovation. Second, I would say, is the acceptance and adoption of cloud technologies. As we talk about these modern, flexible, configurable solutions, a lot of that is inherently based in SaaS. And SaaS solutions have just remarkable security initiatives in place. And because of that, manufacturers are growing increasingly comfortable with using cloud solutions. So it's no longer something that is great for other industries, not for us. Now it's becoming much more of a reality for manufacturers. APIs and integrations are becoming, you can't attend a user conference or look at someone's website, well, the right websites, without reading about APIs and integrations. And that's because these individual, easy to deploy components must be connected by the APIs. And those are becoming much more prevalent. They're much more flexible, much more turnkey. And the organizations that are investing in this area are the ones that are really powering us forward towards this vision. Additionally, we talked a little bit at the beginning about the workforce shortage. And I won't belabor the point because I think everybody, it's top of mind. You can't read an article about manufacturing without reading about the workforce shortage, but it bears repeating that manufacturers are looking for a way to attract and retain the workforce as their current employees are starting to reach retirement age. And the truth is that technology attracts next-gen workers. They want to be ensconced at companies that prioritize innovation, that use technology. They're much more comfortable with it. They don't want to spend their time doing menial manual tasks. They want to focus on, making the best product that they can, or, really streamlining the process so that they can be as efficient as possible. And finally, this is where, we talked a lot about the market dynamics, but being nimble and agile, pardon me, really does give you a competitive advantage. I can't tell you how many manufacturers I've spoken to who have these types of technologies in place tell us that when they take customers and suppliers on tours of their shop floor, everyone stops dead in their tracks when they start to see these screens that are showing the real-time data being pulled off their machines. And what they've told us is that that sends a signal to their customers and their suppliers that they're going to treat their relationships with the same diligence that they're treating the equipment on their shop floor, their processes. It just sends a signal that you are serious and that you stand for quality kind of throughout the organization. So where does MachineMetrics fit into the picture? You know, I think first off, it bears saying that we are not an MES provider, nor do we claim to be. We do work alongside a whole lot of MES systems, so we are very familiar. And what we see right now is that most manufacturers are pushing these rigid processes down to the equipment and the people on the shop floor. And if data centricity is the goal, you need to capture and drive data from machines to the people and systems on your shop floor so that they can improve the processes. It's about opening that feedback loop and being able to make those process adjustments much more quickly. You know, machines are constantly telling you a story. How many parts are being made, how long it's actually taking, is it about to fall out of spec, does it need maintenance? But that data isn't being effectively captured and connected in order to drive those improvements. You know, that's where we come in. MachineMetrics succeeds because we automate the collection of machine data. We make it incredibly easy to gain insights from that data. And we also make it incredibly easy to share those insights with the people and systems in your environment. We're driving action with automated workflows. So when something happens at the machine level, we can automate a signal into your MES or ERP that something needs to change. A change can be made in the process, and boom, you've just optimized that process and been able to perhaps sidestep a big issue. And you know, we had one of my Graham might stop me when I say this, but one of our customers recently told us he wishes we could just wipe everything off our website and just say MachineMetrics. It just works. And we all laugh because, you know, he's right. I mean, it does. It out of the box. It's simple to deploy. You know, we have a whole host of customers. 80% have self-deployed to their own machines. And it's just an incredibly quick time to value. And I think what a lot of our customers have experienced is how machine data and the insights from that data is able to make not just, you know, the machines operate better, but it's able to make what they're doing within their other systems, MES and ERP, much more effective. Finally, you know, we're not alone on this mission. There are organizations around the world who are buying into the vision of the connected factory ecosystem. You know, MachineMetrics is one of a number of connected solutions, such as Upkeep or Fulcrum, who are working together to make this vision a reality. So I would leave you with this. If you are interested in learning more, you know, look to the vendors who are talking about you know, this kind of connected extensibility approach. Reach out to us if you have any questions. We're happy to talk you through it, answer any questions you might have. I know we want to open things up for some questions, so I will hand it over to Graham, but I just want to say thank you for attending. I've left my contact information up here if you want to, again, reach out with questions. If you want to send me an angry email telling me why MES is the greatest thing ever, I would happily engage in that conversation. But I hope you enjoyed today's presentation.
Thanks, Susie. That was a great presentation. I really enjoyed it. And now we got a number of questions from the audience, so we're going to kind of try to take these as fast as we can. And for what it's worth, we may have time for a couple others. So I do urge our attendees who are here to drop those in the Q&A or the chat section. You know, first question came from Anonymous, but could you provide us with a few examples of how MachineMetrics can automate certain processes related to MES? And maybe like some of these questions I'll try to answer directly, and some I'll throw to Susie. But what maybe while I give her a break from talking, one example of that is like a maintenance activity. So many MachineMetrics customers today are using MachineMetrics really as a trigger system for their maintenance. And previously maintenance systems are almost like a function or even an add-on to your ERP or maybe even your MES. But as the advent of CMMS solutions like maintenance and upkeep and fix are becoming more and more prevalent, those systems, those separate vertical systems now require data from the machines to be optimized. So many of our customers are automating that workflow between when the machines need maintenance, whether it's an alarm code or an error or a condition, and then driving those maintenance tickets and work orders in their maintenance systems with real-time machine data. And that's a cool just a use case. Well, we're on the factory floor. You don't have as many people, right, having to be able to automate a process, but have it driven by the data from the machine and not kind of a segregated process from that data, driven by like a kind of like gut feel or calendar, right? It's just a transformation, right, and an efficiency that can be gained. Okay, other questions. This is how does MachineMetrics capture data from the factory floor? Susie, you want me to take this one, or I can go quickly through it if it's worthwhile. Well, for those of you who are interested, I'll give Susie some more time. So this is really the foundation of our platform, is just that automated capture and transformation of data from assets. And what really our biggest differentiator is that the connection that machine enables consumable machine data and insights in minutes. Largely, we gather data directly from the control of the machine through MachineMetrics Edge, which is a scalable plug-and-play solution that can be self-installed by most of our customers. And a big difference maker for us last year is that, like Susie mentioned, over 80% of our customers are able to plug and play their machines using MachineMetrics. To do that, for those of you who are here and know how difficult that was to do so, it's incredibly freaking hard. So we developed dozens of these custom software adapters that were designed to automatically map out, unlock, collect, and standardize the data points from these machines. So internal sensors, machine statuses, modes, alarms, overrides, loads, feeds, speeds, temperature, rotary velocities, diagnostic PMC parameters. And this is really like a big difference maker again, like in what we do is that if you're going to like drive, say like, MES, right, or maintenance with the machine data, well, you really need to know what is happening on these machines, right? So when it comes down to being able to manage production scheduling or work orders, the data, right, that can be collected from these machines can be essentially scraped from the data that we're collecting, right, through the program header or the machine data. We can know what parts being produced. We can know, what program is being run. And all that information allows us to take that and then automate, production information. That can go essentially into an MES, for example. Now I know that Susie also, I want to give her a chance to tease, something else, because we've been working on an even more extensibility when it comes to connecting data from legacy equipment. So Susie, I figure I'll throw that your way.
Yeah. So in addition to capturing the data from the sensors that are sort of inherently within the machine, the sensors that come when you purchase it, we're also getting ready to share some more capabilities around our ability to connect to, a whole host of sensors that are applied aftermarket. So if you have an old machine that is, not equipped with any kind of sensors, we do have the ability today to connect data from that machine, but we are constantly adding new ways to connect and enrich the data that we're pulling from the machine. Our engineers, they can't help themselves. They're constantly finding new ways to add new data streams in. And so we have some cool things coming within the next couple of weeks that we'll be excited to share more publicly about some of those capabilities that we're going to be adding as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, thanks for that, Susie. And Yeah, and just there was a follow-up question that came from there from somebody who was watching, which was what connectivity protocols we support, and I'll try to give you like the fastest overview I can, and but not limited to MT Connect, FANUC Focus, OPC UA, UMADI, proprietary controls like Mitsubishi, Citizen, Haas, Heidenhain, Siemens, Ethernet IP, Modbus TCP. Just go off the top of my head here. That's just a short answer there. So let's see. Let me see if I can get to this last question. This is going to be kind of already answered this, but I figured maybe if it deserves reiteration, how does MachineMetrics augment kind of like our MES system? I'll just throw out there that, like we said earlier, MachineMetrics is not an MES system. We're really seeing some of our customers are either kind of like going more vertical with, say, breaking out, scheduling, quoting, maintenance, machine data collection into just vertical solutions that they then leverage APIs to connect. You also see a lot of solutions on the market trying to do all of those kind of in one like new gen MES. But I think what we found and most of our customers have found is that they end up just falling into the same problem, which is just that those vertical applications and solutions are just require such depth of capabilities that one solution, despite the allure, if you will, never really solves it to the level that you really need it to. And why sacrifice when you can, easily connect systems? So just to that front, like for modern machines, at least, that operational information that I was talking about, which exists in the data. So for example, like part numbers or operational names is stored in the header files of these CNC programs. So when they get sent to the machine through, DNC or something like that. So we can parse that data out of the header file and then use this as, say, like a unique operation for that machine. So when a new program is sent to the machine, our platform can pick that change and then can either associate the work being done on that machine with an existing operation, right? Or if it exists, or even like create a new operation. So how does that then like translate into the MES? Well, two different ways. One, now all the production information is associated with the operation, right? And then it can be autonomously sent, into say like an Airtable or even an Excel or even your MES system. But we also have this operator interface, which displays like these conditions and production information from these machines. And many of our operators use that to enter current work order numbers if required, or classify non-conformance or scrap or various quality components to the production. So we can also trigger workflows from that operator tablet that sends data to an MES or a third-party system. And that can be essentially customized or even driven through like a periodic time schedule. So, what's kind of the point here? It's like, well, MachineMetrics in many ways can reduce the need for manual data entry at those MES terminals, right? Which my understanding, based on the number of conversations I have with customers, people don't like to use and kind of are a real pain, right? So if we can automate those kind of data-driven triggers from the machine data, then there are a number of enhancements that can be made to an MES system almost immediately, right, by connecting these two systems. So that was my like short but long answer to that question. Hope that was useful. I want to wrap things up because we're getting to the top of the hour and our voices are hoarse. But if you do have any other questions, please don't hesitate to check out MachineMetrics.com. Feel free to book a demo with our team. A big shout out to those of you that asked questions, and especially to Susie for doing such a great job with the presentation. Nicely done. We will send out these slides, so bear with us as we get that loaded up and send you a video. And if you have any other questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you all for joining us.